What's up, guys? This is Wences. Welcome back to my channel where we talk about personal development. And today I want to talk to you about one more benefit for broadening your life. See, when I talk about broadening your life, it mainly means that I want your life to be bigger. As in what kind of impact you have on the world, what kind of impact you have on your community, what you expect from your life. In a way of, are your dreams big enough for you? How many people you interact with, how deep your relationships are, and how many people you impact in a positive way that helps them and encourages them to grow themselves. See, since I started doing this, my life has changed so much, and that's why I keep preaching this, because it's so important to me. And I've never been that person. So I've really lived for a while, and my teenage years, and probably until my 20s, when I was really going the other direction, which meant preserve. As much as I could, I kept from myself. I didn't let my energy out. I didn't want people to know all that I am, mainly because I was fear of rejection, but in many other ways, because it was just the way I went through life. I felt like, what for? I have my 5 friends or my 2 friends. I have my family, and everything that's happening, it's happening in my head. I don't need that. Right? I mean, we as intuitives, we always need some kind of reference point in the outside world, but most of it is happening under the surface, so to say, right? I think that's one of the main differences between, let's say, an INFJ and an ESTP. See, I do not believe that ESTPs are, think less or less is going on in their life. I think that they really put most of their energy out naturally, and a lot of that exchange and that learning is happening in contact with the outside world, with their senses. And with us, it's like we don't need many data points. We need a couple, and then we're living in our head. But the problem is that we think that's enough, right? I mean, like, we don't need those reference points in the outside world. We don't need something that will actually broaden our life because we have all our imagination. But when you don't put those reference points out there, when you don't fight on establishing and building something up in the real world, you can't really build new impressions. And you actually expect from the people in your closest surrounding to be what you need them to be, so you project so much more. See, I've seen so many INFJs think, well, I understand people so well, and I don't need so many people in my life because I know how they are. And when I see them, I want them to be in a very specific way. So why should I go somewhere out there when I have that person right next to me that can give me so much? But what we're doing is we're really going deep into the other person's mind, from our filter, of course. Like, I've gotten to a point where I'm, completely convinced that so much of this is just made up in our head. But this is where we really want to connect with people. We kind of go deep into their mind, imagine how they are on the inside from this like really, really introvert intuition standpoint. And then we think this is how they have to be, and this is how I want them to be. And if they're not like this, then I'm much stricter with them than when I'm having a broader life. And this is really keeping us from having amazing relationships with the people we love. I will give you an example, which is the relationship with my father. I have such a great relationship with my father. It's amazing. I feel like we've lost so much time in my teens and in my 20s because of it. It's neither of us' fault, but the way we interacted when I was a child was that we were so similar, and we always wanted the other one to be what we're not, that I wanted him to be somebody he was not, and he wanted me to be somebody I was not. And therefore we had this relationship that was full of pain and disappointment and rejection, right? We felt the other one was rejecting us. And so I know what I expected from my father. I know I expected from my father to be, let's say, an ESTP. That he would be the one initiating everything, that he would be the one who does all that SE stuff that I didn't feel like doing, or that I felt if I was doing, then people are not gonna love me. Because this is how I was brought up, this is how things were happening. And on top of everything, I've talked about it in the last video, we need self-discipline. When we start integrating and when we do things that are good for us, they're not gonna feel great in the beginning. It's a new pathway we have to build for ourselves. So the more reference points you build in the outside world, the more you actually create a life that can sustain all of your imagination. Then we don't need that one person or our family members to be everything we want them to be. The moment I started building a life for myself, which is not based on neither I'm gonna wait for somebody who's gonna love me, then I can live myself, or saying like, well, I'm doing everything that society is telling me to do, which of course in itself is very, very subjective, because no matter how much you think you know what society wants, it's still your filter. It's your culture, it's your age, it's your demographic, and it's your perception of things. You decide where you work, who you hang out with. We make so many decisions a day. But nonetheless, you know exactly what I mean when you say, well, everything looks great on paper. Like, my life is great on paper. I'm doing everything society is telling me to do, but I don't feel like I'm really living my truth. But the moment I really started living my truth and I had real reference points in the real world. So for me, it was really looking outside and saying, if I want to build a life on my own and on my terms, then where am I at right now? And I was nowhere. I was really at a point where I felt my life didn't have anything that resembled the life I wanted to live. Maybe, of course, a little bit, I had a roof over my head, I had my family, so I knew these things, but I mean, from like really my imagination, I didn't see in the real world. And so I put myself through self-discipline. I pushed myself to do things that I knew are going to help me in the long run, although they didn't feel great at first. I started doing this channel. I started really disciplining myself to get up and do those videos and edit them and really be ready to be ridiculed and to be judged. And I did that because I knew I had to create a life on my own, and this is the way I would do it. I was never the artistic kind who would write poetry or who would write music or draw. This was my way of, showing my truth. And so I knew how important it was to me, and I built really those reference points, and my life became broader because it's not just a channel, right? It's about like me deciding, well, I'm gonna have friends that I share my passion for fashion with, or my passion for ambition, or whatever it is. Like, I really made it a point to let people know what I was about and broaden my life. And I had so many of my needs met because of the way I created my life. So imagine it like this. You're in a little room, and then you're trying to like really decorate that room. That is your like current life when you haven't really started living for yourself. Because of course there's always a life force there. I mean, you're still alive, so there is this room, right? And so when you see a chair there, then you want this chair to be exactly how you want it to be, because that's the only chair you have. You have only that room, and that chair is a big part of that room. So you're much stricter with how that chair should be. But the moment I started building a house, a country, actually an entire planet for myself, where everything is going the way I wanted it to go, and if things don't work out, then I just take it as like a hint of what to change, then this chair doesn't have to be so great. Then this chair doesn't have to be exactly how I want it to be. I love that chair because it's there, because I appreciate it for what it is, right? I love my father now so much more, and we have such a great relationship because I see him much more for who he is than for who I wanted him to be. He's like a very adventurous person, and I never cherished that about him because I was looking for so many things I needed in my life. And I was projecting onto him, and I wanted him to be that way, and he was not. Let's not forget how many conclusions for relationships I based off of that, Like, we all know how important it is, those relationships with our parents. But, now I can really love him for who he is and for what he likes and what his ambitions are and his joys are in life without me trying to put that on him, and vice versa. So the moment I stopped expecting him to be somebody else, he stopped expecting me to be somebody else. And then now I don't have relationships with people where I go deep into their mind and then try to control them on a deep level and manipulate them. See, nobody's gonna say that they do that. It's not like I tried that. I, of course, thought I'm just doing what's best for the other person. I'm trying to be kind. Like, it's not like you go through life and you say, I'm gonna manipulate that person. I just gonna look into their mind, I'm gonna trigger them, find out who they are, and then I'm gonna use that to my advantage. Nobody does that. Of course, the intentions were good, but it was still what I was doing and what a lot of us do when we're not developed. Because if you have only those 5 people, of course, you're gonna try to project onto them what you want them to be. It's just those 5 people. So how in the world is it going to be any other way? You have your imagination in your mind. You need reference points in the real world to anchor that. and you're gonna try to anchor it as much as you can. And if you're at a point where you feel like it's so difficult for you to broaden your life and to just let go of people and what you expect of them, and introduce yourself to new people and so on, then you're much more likely to want to force that person to be who you want them to be, instead of saying, well, I love you and I accept you and I respect who you are, but I need something else on top, so I'm just gonna go and get it somewhere else. And then I can appreciate for what you bring to the table without judgment. See, I'm still doing that in a way. I'm sure there's still a bunch of judgment I put into the people in my life. And in 10 years from now, I'm gonna look at today and gonna see that much more. But I also can look 10 years back, and I can look 5 years back and see how much more I was doing that and how unhealthy it was. And because I know that I don't know what I don't know, I know that these are still things I'm doing. That's why it's so important to me to broaden my life, because I know that with each of those things, I become more of myself, because then I have to make less and less compromise, and I'm gonna project less and less, because I'm just gonna attract things into my life that fill it out, that make it more of who I am. And so if somebody sees me today, they know much more of who I am than if somebody met me 5 years ago. Because if they meet me now, they see my life. If they want to know anything about me, they will see what I do in my free time. They will see my friends. They will see what I do here. They will probably never ever really get an image, but those things exist. They exist much more in the real world and with reference points than existed 5 years ago. On top of everything, 5 years ago, I didn't have all the information I had then. So my imagination today is also 10 times better than it was 5 years ago, because I have new inputs, I have new information, things that come in that help me to create even greater visions. So please broaden your life, and you'll see how well your relationships will develop, how great they can be, because you don't expect them to be who you need them to be, because you're not dependent on them anymore. If you need something, you go out and you meet new people and you start a new venture and you just create it. And it's a matter of practice. Push yourself every day to challenge yourself, to do something that is uncomfortable, that will give you new reference points, new ideas, new insight, and that'll help you grow. I really hope that helped you. It was a huge thing for me. If it did, please let me know in the comments. And if you like the video, like always, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want me to help you with your life, check out the link in the description for one-on-one coaching. I wish you a great day, guys. I love you very much, and I talk to you next time. Bye.